everybody. It's Miss Becca from the Dwight Library, and I'm excited. Today we're giving you a virtual tour of our family sugar bush. Never done this before. There's a lot of firsts going on this week. So welcome. We have topped about 50 trees this year. We've got about 50 buckets hanging, and if you listen really closely, I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear this symphony in the woods of the sap just drip, drip, dripping into the bottom of the buckets. It's pretty beautiful. It's a nice, quiet, calm day today, perfect temperature. Yesterday was a little sunnier out, so the sap was dripping a lot faster. The sap really likes the warm sun. But the temperature is still good today, and so yeah, we're going to show you how all of this works, how we turn sap into maple syrup. So come on over here with me and I'll show you the buckets and how all that system is set up. So in Canada, we have about 13 different types of maple trees, and there are 3 kinds that actually produce syrup, or sap, sorry. And that's the black maple, the red maple, and the sugar maple. So the sugar maple is the yummy one, and that's what we have tapped here. And Canada is actually one of the main producers of maple syrup in the entire world. Quebec, which is the province right next to ours, right next to Ontario, actually produces 2/3 of the entire world's supply of maple syrup. So Canada is right up there with all of our maple syrup productions. So if you want to come over, I'll show you all the different parts of this bucket system. So at the beginning of February, usually mid-February, we drill holes into the trees. And the reason why we do this in February is because that's when the weather starts to have ideal conditions for the sap to run. So in order for the sap to run, you need the night times to be really cool, so below 0 degrees, and the day times to be above 0 degrees, preferably even above 2 degrees. And when the sun shines, that also makes the sap flow a lot faster. Another way to make the sap flow, get more sap flowing, is by placing the buckets on the south side of the tree. And that's because the south side gets the most amount of sun and the most amount of warmth, and that helps the sap flow. So we've got our bucket here, and the way that we hung it up is we drilled a hole into the maple tree about this far in. So if you can imagine the drill going in about that far through the bark. And so this is a little tree cookie that I've got here. So I'll show you, this black part in the center is called the heartwood. Just like in our bodies, we have a heart that's right in the core of our bodies. So this is the heartwood of the tree. On the outer edge, we have what's kind of like our skin. It's the bark of the tree. And then in between the heartwood and the bark is called the sapwood. And the sapwood is where the sap is flowing through the tree. So that's the part that we drill into. And once we've made our hole, we take this little gadget. It's called a spile. And we put this part inside, whoops, this way. And then we proceed to hammer the spile into the hole that we've created. And that way, the sap will flow through the spile and into our bucket. So I'll show you here. There's the spile. Now you can see, if Jack zooms in nice and close here, you can see that the sap is dripping. So it's late afternoon. It is actually getting a little bit chillier out. Yesterday it was running even faster than that. But so the sap is dripping, and this bucket is actually super full. I'll just take this for a second and I'll show you how full this bucket is. So we've got lots of sap in here, and that sap is actually pretty clear, isn't it? It kind of looks just about like water. If I was to stick my face underneath the drip and take a sip of that sap, it would pretty much taste like water, but it does have a tiny bit of sweetness to it. Some people buy sap water, and it actually is pretty expensive, but we have it for free right here in our bucket. So that's pretty much what happens. The sap is collecting in the buckets, and then once this bucket gets nice and full, we bring it over to our boiling station. So that's where we're going to go next. The sap has been collected in the buckets. We bring it over to these big white buckets down here. So you can see it's still pretty light in color and almost looks just like water. And then it gets transferred over to our fire. So here's our fire roasting down below. Nice and warm. And this is a pretty simple operation. Some people have some pretty high-tech gadgets going on in their sugar bush, but we've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years, and this system seems to work for us pretty well. So we're just sticking with what we know. So in these 2 buckets, these 2 pans here, you'll see the different colors of sap. So I wonder if you can tell which one is closer to being ready to be syrup. So the front one here is pretty light. So that one is just some fresh sap that's come right from the tree and it's boiling away. And the one at the back here is much darker. So that sap is actually getting very close to being syrup. So one way to tell is to pour it off your spoon. And this is still coming off my spoon pretty easily. It's still pretty watery, so it's not ready yet to be put into bottles. Another way to tell if your sap is ready is by the temperature. So every day hi Jack, every day the temperature, boiling temperature of water changes just a little bit, and so we have to determine what that temperature is. So if it's about 100 degrees for the boiling temperature of water, we want to go 7 degrees above that. So the temperature for the sap to be ready would be 7 degrees above the boiling temperature of water for that day. So that's another way to check. Also, our favorite way to check in our family is to taste test. So we do a lot of tasting of our maple syrup and our sap as we go, and that's usually our biggest determiner of how ready the sap is. So once the sap's ready, we bring it over to a bucket, and this is a filter that we place inside of our bucket, because sometimes, even though there's lids on the buckets on the trees, sometimes we still get little bits of sap in there, little bits of bark or twigs. So we want to make sure to get all of that out before we drink our syrup. So we put the filter into the bucket, and then we pour the syrup through the filter, and then that way the fresh syrup goes into the bucket, and we collect all the little bits of leaves and twigs that we don't want to eat on our pancakes. So syrup is actually a really cool form of sugar. It's a much healthier form of sugar than refined white sugar, and it has a lot of antioxidants in it as well. So we love to have pancakes in our house. We have pancakes usually a couple times a week. And another option, a healthier option, if you're up for this, is mixing 1 egg, scrambling 1 egg, and mixing a mashed banana in with it. And that will kind of form into a pancake-like shape when you fry it up. Sometimes we mix in a little bit of flaxseed and chia seeds as well. And then sometimes we put peanut butter on top, and then we pour the maple syrup over top. So that's kind of another family favorite for us. So finally, to show you the final product here, this is one of our bottles of maple syrup. Nice and dark, that one. Not too much debris in there, which is good. And that, I was going to show you having maple syrup on top of some pancakes, but my kids ate all the pancakes this morning, so that's not going to happen. But I'll see if anyone has any questions, please let me know. How long from start to finish does it take to make the syrup? That's a great question. So usually, if we were to collect sap on one day and then boil it the next day, the boiling, depending on how well we keep the fire stoked, the boiling usually takes at least a full day, sometimes close to 2 days, or a day and a half before we're ready to pour it into the bottles. So that's a great question. If there's any other questions, you feel free just to post them on in the comments, and I'll answer them as we go as well, and later on this evening. And we are excited that you got to come on this virtual tour of our sugar bush with us. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, what kind of tree does the syrup come from? Great question, Haley. So we tap the sugar maples. And the reason that we know that they're sugar maples is because in the fall, we go around and we look up, and you can probably remember what the shape is of a maple leaf. So we look up and we find all the maple trees that are on our property, and we flag them with a piece of tape. And so that lets us know in the winter time which trees are the maple trees, because in the winter there's no leaves up there, right? When you look up above me, there aren't any leaves on the maple trees. So it's sometimes a little bit hard to tell by the bark. So that's what we do, is we figure it out in the fall, which trees we're going to tap, and we mark them with tape, and then that's how we know which ones to tap in the winter. Good questions. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you hopefully on Wednesday as well. Okay, so long from our sugar bush. Bye-bye.